If you are one of those people who is still wondering why on earth you should spend so much more money on a cinema camera, and if there's even reason behind why you should buy it, if the quality seems the same as some of these mirrorless cameras nowadays, this video is for you. Hi guys, my name is Roman, welcome back to the channel, and in this video I would like to tell you some reasons why I switched to cinema camera, in this case Canon C70. I've been using Canon R5 since the day it came out, and I love this camera. A lot of people have love and hate relationship with this camera, and some say it's targeted mostly for photographers and it's great for that purpose. In a year and successfully managed to actually run a full-time business making commercials for brands. But after some time I felt like Canon R5 is a great camera, but I wanted to experiment with something else. And I've been eyeing some of these cinema cameras that have been coming out, like Red Komodo, Canon C70, Sony FX3, and I've been very tempted to get one. So finally I pulled the trigger and I bought the Canon C70. Let me tell you right off the bat, I love this camera. I have many reasons why I love it, but there are some things that I would like to leave for the end of the video that I don't really like, but I knew about them and I know how to deal with it. So hopefully if you're doubting if you should buy this camera or not, this video will help you a bit. So number one reason why I love this camera is built-in ND filters. Oh my god, this is such a clutch. With a press of a button you can just switch to an ND filter, and there are 10 of them, and all you have to do is pretty much set your shutter speed, and here it's actually a shutter angle, not like a mirrorless camera, so you just set it to 180. You don't have to do it double the frame rate, no extra settings, literally just put 180 aperture that you like, and that's it. With the tap of a button on ND filter button that you can actually customize, you can change your exposure in seconds, and it is really convenient and it gets you the best motion blur, especially in fast moving objects and stuff like that, shooting 24 frames per second. Number two, you might already guessed it, it's assignable custom buttons. I mean, every camera has assignable custom buttons, just like my Canon R5 and stuff, but here it's a bit different. Here you have like literally list of buttons, which are numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10, I think up to 11 or 12. There are some buttons actually in front of it, and I'm filming on the C70 right now, where you can assign whatever you want to a button. I'm saying anything. Like for example, if you want to load a LUT into your SD card, sure, press the button. It will apply the LUT in camera so you can see how the video will look like, which is fantastic. Before you could only do it with external monitor and you wouldn't be able to switch to a LUT so quick. Or let's say if you want to disable focus, no problem. Press the button, the focus is disabled, you don't have to touch anything on the lens, it's literally just being disabled. Or if you want to switch from different autofocus mode, no problem. Tap a different button, switches from a different focus mode, easy. So let's say if you want to focus on face, or you want to focus on the subject, switch fast between those two, not a problem at all. Another reason why I love this camera is Canon Log 2 and its dynamic range. Canon R5 has a Log 3, which is really nice flat profile, but it doesn't have as much of dynamic range as the C70. Having the C Log 2, I believe it adds another 2 extra stops of dynamic range, and I've done some tests and you can clearly see that you have more dynamic range with the C70. For example, sometimes when you shoot inside of the car and the window will be blown out, but in this case you can still preserve those highlights, and shadows will be still clean and very nice looking, and it will have that expensive cinematic look, if you know what I'm saying. You know what I'm saying? Another reason why I like this camera, and this one is kind of funny, I wouldn't think it would be even a reason before I got it, is the weight and size of it. It is not huge, but it's not little, so which means if you try to shoot handheld, you can actually get a really solid documentary style shots without small extra jittery shots. And you can still pop it on the gimbal and still fly it on the gimbal without any problem. So I would say it's about 1DX series camera size, but it's a bit more chunkier because it has a fan in the back. But you can easily shoot it handheld. It has a nice grip on top, which is another topic. Some people hate it, some people like it. I like it a lot, but there are ways to build this camera out, and I'm planning another different video just talking about the rig setup, so I'll just leave it for the other video. Another point worth to mention that this camera has unlimited recording. For some reason, I'm not sure why, but most of these other cameras nowadays still have a 29.5 1.59-second recording limit in camera. So let's say if you want to shoot a longer interview, it will cut in half hour and then you have to re-record again. This camera has no limit, so you can record continuously as much as you want. And let's say if you're running out of battery, you can just plug in a cord and the power will be running off of the cable. So you can have this camera on pretty much indefinitely. And with the fan on, it will never overheat. Speaking of what you can plug into this camera, oh man, this camera has so many ports. Full-size HDMI port, XLR, in this case 2 mini XLR ports, a regular mic port, a microphone port, so you could run at the same time 3 tracks of audio, which is great. And the mini XLR cables pretty much have the adapter for full-size XLR, so you can have full-size audio without any additional recorder, and it will be built into the camera, and it will just have a different track, and you can separate them, and you can combine them into one and just have all these tracks in one video at the same time, which is really convenient. And I've been lately using that, and it's really nice because you can have a backup. So let's say if your external recorder, or maybe a shotgun on top of a subject, didn't get a good audio, maybe it was windy, you are safe because let's say you had a lab that was transferring the signal from the camera, and you have a backup audio that you could use when your original, you get it, audio messed up or something. Well, and you probably guessed it, there is no perfect camera in this world, especially for your needs. But for my needs, this camera is 99% perfect other than these 2 things. As everybody else said before I bought this camera, the build quality, especially of the LCD screen, for some reason is really cheap. Everything other than the LCD screen is fine and it's really solid, but for some reason that flip-flop screen really flip-flops. It's kind of feels cheap, and I'm afraid it will break easy. So I've been treating it pretty carefully, and I've been just using external monitor for most of the time, but it does feel a little wiggly. Even though it's brand new right now, I feel like after some time it's gonna start being loose. So you just have to make sure you're extra careful with it. But I knew this before I bought it, and that's okay with me because for the price of this camera that has a sensor from a C500 Mark III, I believe, which is like $15,000 camera. So pretty much it delivers the same image in a different body for half price, not even. So, I mean, I'll deal with the monitor. And the second issue that everybody talks about, and it was the biggest issue that was stopping me before I bought this camera, is the autofocus. Yeah, so let me tell you, if you watched all these videos online, which I watched before I bought this camera, I'll just tell you that the autofocus is not as bad, but compared to something like R5, it is like if the R5 is here and like this is the C70 right there at like 80%, but it also depends on the situation. So during the daytime, it looks to your face, it looks to the subject pretty good. And I did some software updates to fix that. So it actually is not bad during the daytime. I've shot it on some bicycle commercials and I locked onto the subject and it was great. And that's when we shoot 24 or 30 frames per second. For some reason, as soon as you switch to 120, and I actually didn't know that, you cannot even tap on the screen to focus. It will just focus on whatever it wants to focus, and sometimes it guesses, sometimes it doesn't, and you have to deal with it, knowing it's a cinema camera. It shouldn't even have autofocus, as they say, but I mean, it does, so it's kind of like, why don't you guys put autofocus to 120? That actually works, but it doesn't. It will, but it will just focus to whatever it wants to, so it's kind of weird. But let's say during the dusk or sunset, when the low light hits in, the autofocus just becomes kind of crazy. It just starts hunting. It reminds me of the Canon R or maybe even 6D Mark II. So if you are planning to shoot in low light, and by the way, the low light on this camera is great, the autofocus wouldn't be as good and I wouldn't rely on it. During the daytime, it's perfect. It's like 95% perfect, but it's not as sticky as on the R5. But during low light, I would just 100% use manual focus, and I would make sure that I have tools for that. But other than that, I wouldn't have any other complaints for this camera. So I will be making more videos about this camera, so if you have any questions about the C70, please leave them in the comments. I am totally planning to make a video on the rig, the custom rig, handheld, and also the gimbal that I'm running. I've tried a couple gimbals, so I kind of make up my mind on what works best. And also I want to test out the autofocus, kind of share with you guys my results. So if you are still thinking if you should upgrade or buy this camera, Hopefully that will help you. But at the end of the day, this is just a tool, and this tool, trust me, provides an amazing quality, amazing dynamic range. Seriously, love this camera. It opened up more creativity to me. It has completely different menus as a regular mirrorless camera, so it's like a new world that you learn, and you do learn a lot more, and you just feel more confident about yourself on a shoot, if you put it that way. Well, thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys learned something new. I hope this video helped you to make up your mind if you should buy this camera or not, I guess. All right, see you next time. Peace.